Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And most importantly, getting into the chat and letting me know who's here, where you're watching in from, and how you're thinking and feeling this morning / afternoon / whatever. I don't know where you guys are located. You guys can also let me know that as well. And we're going to get into the mess. So, yeah, we have loads to talk about today. And as I said yesterday, we're going to focus most of the conversation today on Martinelli, left wing, left side, what actually happened this past season that potentially affected Martinelli in our left-hand side, fluidity and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to, well, that's pretty much the majority of what we're going to talk about. And then we're also going to talk about players that have been linked to the left wing position and kind of talk about if they're a good fit and could it happen and all that kind of stuff. So that's the main focus of today, because that's what we talked about yesterday. If you guys didn't watch yesterday's show, we went over Emile Smith-Rowe and Vieira and Ramsdale and all the news regarding those players potentially leaving Arsenal. So you guys can go back and watch that from yesterday, because we won't really cover that on today's show. But I also wanted to let you guys know that I did go ahead and set up the classic watch along for the 2020 FA Cup final. You guys voted yesterday, and so I went ahead and set it up. You guys can see here on TIFO that it is an upcoming watch along, and you guys can go ahead and RSVP for the watch along that's going to be on Thursday, the 30th at 8 p.m. UK time by just going ahead and clicking the link in the description. There's a link in the description box that will take you to the TIFO website, and from there you guys can RSVP to the watch along. I will continue to remind you guys from now until Thursday, but I just want to put it out there that you guys voted, and so we'll be watching it. I'm still trying to get confirmation on whether we're going to actually do a screen share from YouTube, because the actual game is on YouTube, the full match. So I'll give you guys more info on that, whether or not we'll just sync it all together and I'll watch from our own screens, or if I'm going to be able to show it to you guys. But on Thursday, we'll be doing that classic watch along. And again, this is for my people, my squad, my people that are not so always wanting to talk about transfers and want to do something a little bit different to still hang out. You guys will be in the comments. We can kind of go down memory lane. You guys know I'm a nostalgia merchant, so anytime I get to look back on past Arsenal successes and we can all talk about that, I'm excited to do that with you guys. So like I said, classic watch along for 8 p.m. It says 12 p.m. on here, but that's because it'll be 12 p.m. my time, but 8 p.m. UK time, and we'll all be hanging out watching that together on Thursday. So I just wanted to put that out there. Let's see who's all in here. Boy says, been saying to sell Martinelli since Jan. And Kedia's lawyer says, big up, Jess. I will be your lawyer after that bum Eddie leaves. Wow. Okay. Jay says, first time on the channel. Well, welcome, Jay. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything else. Sam says, hey, Jess. Hello, Sam. Jagoon says, Jess about to start a new fan base civil war. Listen, we're going to get into it. But I feel like I do need to put a little disclaimer out there, because I know people are going to come in here and say, oh my God, Jessica, you hate Martinelli, you want him gone. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but just let me land. Just let me land. I am going to give play devil's advocate a little bit. I will put my opinion out there, but I do want to facilitate a conversation amongst the people in the chat, because I can see every side of the argument. I really, really can. Mr. 142 says, what's up, Jess? A 2-day campaign. A 2-day campaign for what? Dragoon says, I'm ready to watch this unfold. Popcorn. Sam says, Jess, I once told you that Arteta had a problem with Trossard. You said I was crazy. Did you see the Times article saying that there was a lot of tension between Trossard and Arteta? Listen, I didn't know whether or not they had an issue with each other or something was going on, but I did see the Times article, and that's the only thing that makes sense. That's the only reason why you'd ever play Nketiah over Trossard, is if you had there was another issue. Like playing Nketiah unprovoked doesn't make sense. So that made it make more sense why Nketiah was playing so much at the beginning of the season, because Trossard should have been starting. It makes no sense. Gwen Feast says Martinelli is just 22 and he will develop into a world-class player. Just needs a real number 8 in the team. We'll talk about the 8 situation and whether if there's a lot more mustard being put on it than there should be. Big Smoke says, "Hey, Jess, does Arsenal being so good and finishing the season with no silverware and United getting FA Cup leave a bitter taste in your mouth?" I mean, anytime that Man United wins something, I'm bitter about it. So, and it's just like the manner, like the fact that City did all that to win the Premier League and then couldn't lift a finger against Man United just was annoying. But it's not so much about them doing anything because we know as a fan base, like you can win the smaller trophies consistently and be going down a negative trajectory. We all know that. So as a top 6 team, it's not just about winning trophies, which is what people are saying. It's just about winning trophies. If it was just about winning trophies and it was okay for you to just win a Carabao Cup and FA Cup here and be in a complete mess, then why do you want to fix things? It's because the top teams, the top 6 teams, the requirements are to win trophies, to always be in the title race, and to always be competitive in the Champions League. Winning trophies is fine, but if that was all that it took, then why is everybody trying to build some sort of project? Why is everybody trying to find a young manager to build something over multiple years if you just had to win a couple of trophies? That's not how it works, you know? So I do think that like a lot of people would change their tune based on who wins what. Like when Arsenal were winning FA Cups here and there, but we're finishing 4th or lower. Nobody was saying that that was a better season or that it was good or anything. It was always that we need to rebuild. We're not good enough. And I think now that it's a different team, people are changing their tune. But in reality, neither United or Arsenal are doing enough. You know, Man United are not competitive in the league. They're not competitive in Champions League. They're not even in Champions League. They want an FA Cup. Where Arsenal are a little bit different. We're competitive in the Premier League and we're fighting for the title. We are competitive. We're kind of competitive in the Champions League, but we're not winning trophies. So the only real team that's doing the business is Man City right now. It's a farmers league. Like they're definitely more competitive than anybody else in every single competition. They're winning big trophies, small trophies. So yeah, I do think that it's just one of those things where the people move the goalposts based on who they're talking about. Samuel says Martinelli and Saka need competition. That's what I feel. They've fallen off of a cliff. Let's be honest. Saka just has GA to mask it. BroPro says, just your thumbnail makes me sad. I know, but I didn't say it. Marco says, let rivals think United and Liverpool had a better season than us. We're happy where we are. Also, like, in your heart of heart, like, would you have rather finished 8th and won an FA Cup? I don't think so, because we all were there and we know that we wanted better than that. It was masking a really poor season, a really tumultuous season where we had lost, you know, a manager and was somewhere in 13th trying to like survive. And then Arteta got us up to 8th. So, you know, we all know the deal. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. I do think that like we need to look at the cups. You know, we've spoken about that to nauseum now, but them winning the FA Cup doesn't really change where the teams are. But just to also just let you guys know about some of the headlines for Arsenal, like, because we're going to be talking mostly about Martinelli, we're not going to be able to go over the smaller stories. So Sambi Lokanga and Kieran Tierney are set to leave Arsenal in the summer. Barcelona star Mariona Caldente is rumored to be close to joining Arsenal. She is a Barcelona women's player that looks set to join Arsenal, which would be a massive signing for Arsenal women. Arsenal are open to listening to offers for Thomas Partey. He has 1 year left on his deal and is not engaged in any sort of extension talk or anything like that. So players that are, you know, within 1 or 2 years left of their deal, if they're not talking about an extension, it's probably because the club is open to moving them on. And that looks like the case with Thomas Partey. Leo Trossard and David Raya have been called up by their national teams, which is great. And Arsenal have also been linked to a couple of different players. Desire Doué, you know, 18-year-old winger that plays in the French league, and also Youssouf Fofana, who you guys know if you've been on the channel, I'm a huge fan of, and him only being 18 million this summer. We have to be looking at him. AC Milan are also interested in Yusuf Fofana, and Rennes is the club that have Desire Dudu. I don't know him. As you can see, I don't know him, but Arsenal and Manchester United are both interested in him. So there you go. Junior says, "Hey Gooners." The Cozy Arsenal podcast says, "Just wouldn't you want a player like Rafael Leao over Martinelli?" Not necessarily. Like we can get into the conversations about players that could potentially replace Martinelli or be an upgrade on Martinelli. I don't always think that Rafael Leao is as good as people say he is. I think that he has really nice moments, but he goes through large stretches without doing anything and nobody talks about it. He's lazy off the ball. And I just cannot see him playing for Arsenal, even though I do think he's a good player, if that makes sense. So I think we need something a little bit different, but we can talk about that in a second. So I just want to start off with this little clip that I think sparked a lot of this. Now, the thumbnail that you guys are talking about, where the quote is, "They need better than Martinelli," actually came from Cam from the FCM podcast. I think he was on when he said it. He was either on the FCM podcast or DR Sports or something like that. And he said that Arsenal need better than Martinelli. He's not the only one that said it, though. Jamie Carragher also said it on Stick to Football. So we're going to go ahead and listen to that now.
Back's not good enough, and I actually think left wing's not quite good enough. I like Martinelli, I like Trossard. So people keep saying Arsenal need a striker. There's not many strikers out there in the world in terms of everybody in the Premier League besides Man City are not happy with their striker really. So that tells you that there's not that many out there. So it mightn't just be a striker. It might be just be for me, when I look at Arsenal, they're missing a top attacker to go with Saka, who I think is fantastic. They need another one, whether that's through the middle or on the left.
Like how you had Salah and Mane, that kind of vibe.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the middle guy. It could be like an unbelievable left winger, you know, who just takes you to another level. But you need a left.
Will they have the money? Would Arsenal have to?
Yeah, I think.
So that was Jamie Carragher talking, to Ian Wright and Roy Keane and Gary Neville on Stick to Football. And that also sparked a huge amount of talk on Arsenal Twitter, because people that love Martinelli didn't like what they heard. Now, I just want to point this out, that now you just watched Jamie Carragher say that. Now I want to read you guys a quote from Jamie Carragher just last season, right? So in that video that we just saw, Jamie Carragher said Arsenal need better than Martinelli, or they need to upgrade left wing. Trossard, and he didn't just say Martinelli, by the way. He also said Trossard and Arsenal need another top attacker. But this is what he said in his Telegraph article last season. He said, "Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli bring the lightning pace and penetration that Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane introduced to Klopp's 4-3-3 system 5 years ago. Jamie Carragher suggests that Jurgen Klopp would be eager to have Arsenal's wing duo, Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli, at Liverpool." And he also highlights the pair's incredible stats from last season. Saka with 12 goals and 10 assists, and Martinelli with 13 goals and 3 assists. That was not even the end of the season stats. Like, that was probably almost 3/4 of the way through. So we know Martinelli had more than that. But that's just the difference in the opinion of Martinelli for just 11 months. That somebody that was saying that Martinelli and Saka were like Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah, and that Klopp would be ecstatic to have the two of them in his team, how it's went from that to Arsenal's left wing is not good enough. This is another reason why I do think you have to take a lot of the media and what they say with a grain of salt, because they change their opinions like the wind, not always based on true facts, but based on what the popular consensus is right now. Carragher, Gary Neville, all of those guys are constantly on Twitter. They're constantly gathering information from football Twitter, and that's how they go viral. They say what they know will get the most, friction in a certain fan base. And I don't doubt that Jamie Carragher may feel like Arsenal have a problem on the left side. and that they also, need a top attacker. But to single out Martinelli when just a year ago, you were saying that Klopp would be happy to have him, and it was like Mohamed Salah and Sane, I do think is a very quick 180, with no context around maybe the player just didn't have a good season, like not even diving deep into the system or anything like that. But genuinely, how many players have we seen over the years just have an off season for it to go from Klopp would love to have him to Arsenal need to get better than him is very, very quick. And I also feel like a lot of Arsenal fans have like swirled around that quickly. The 180 has been very slick. Like for me personally, I have never rated Martinelli as highly as other people. I've always felt that there's an opportunity to upgrade, but I do think that it's unfair to just completely ignore the context surrounding Martinelli this season. I felt differently about Martinelli, but I do feel like some people just go with the wind. And just because somebody has a poor season or maybe the system isn't working to get the best out of their ability doesn't mean that we need to completely turn our back on a 22-year-old that scored 15 goals last season, which I don't actually think was like a fluke or anything like that. I do think that, everything was going our way, but I definitely think Martinelli is a player that scores goals. Like he's definitely a goal scorer. And just to underline how quickly we forget about players and stuff like that, he was also a part of Gary Neville's team of the season last season. So it's like, this is very quick. A year is very quick. And a lot of things do change in football, but he is 22. And I don't think there's any reason to like fully turn your back on Martinelli right now. I do think it's quite strange. Now, a lot of talk has been around Arsenal and Arsenal's system and how Kai Havertz, I mean, at the beginning of the season, there was so much talk about how Kai Havertz was limiting, like literally Kai Havertz is limiting. Arteta has prioritized Kai Havertz, and Kai Havertz being in the team is limiting Martinelli from being able to do what he does best. That was the go-ahead narrative from the time the season started to the time we went to Dubai. Now, when that excuse expired for me was when Kai stopped playing in midfield, and that was post-Dubai. Post-Dubai, Kai played most games not in midfield, but up front. And Martinelli, who's played still a lot, like in the second half of the season, mostly would play with like Jorginho or whatever, so that kind of expired. But in the beginning of the season, the narrative was that Kai playing in midfield was the reason why Martinelli wasn't playing well. I just don't know how true that is. I do think that there has been like a vitriol towards Kai because of Martinelli. There's a vitriol towards Saka because of Martinelli. Like Saka's performing because he has all these great things around him to help him perform, but Martinelli's just like over there destitute on the left-hand side. I don't think our left-sided fluidity was great, but I also think that the level to which Martinelli fell off is not just due to the system. His confidence was rocked a little bit too. So to relieve him of any sort of responsibility, I think is not right, but you have to look at it just a little bit, right? So he had a little dip in form. I looked at, a couple of different things that people have been talking about, his isolation on the left-hand side and whether or not that is actually hurting him. Is it hindering him or is it helping him being so isolated on one side? And, also that Martinelli and Saka do a lot more defensive work than other forwards. I do agree with the consensus that Saka and Martinelli don't get the benefit of being star attackers in Arteta's system. I do think they defend too much. I think even against lower sides, we don't leave anybody up. Martinelli is a great transitional threat. When we talk about not having a transitional threat, it's actually not true. We don't have more than one, but we do have one, and that's Martinelli. To not leave him up by the halfway line, to always require our forwards to play almost like wing backs or fullbacks, I do think takes away from their ability to be more threatening on the other end. And so when you look at the wide instigators graph on the left, successful attacking actions per 90, plus defensive duels won, I do think that like our forwards are required to do a lot more defensive work, which is great and makes them more well-rounded. They're still very effective going forward, but I do feel like I would like to see them do a little bit less. You know, if we're going to compare them to the Sadio Manes and Salahs, even though they did do defensive work, they also got the benefit of being star attackers and sometimes would be kept up high to allow them to do more of what they do best. And I don't think Martinelli does the best in crowd scenes. I don't think he really does the best when he has to track back. I think he was given a lot of criticism around like, you know, the Bayern goal that was scored and was he in the right place when Leon Bailey scored and things like that. So I think that's something to look at. In terms of the isolation on the left-hand side, I don't necessarily see this as like the biggest problem in the world because the way that we play is the right-hand side creates and the left-hand side finishes, and that does suit Martinelli's skill set. I do think it's been a lot more obvious this season, and so he is more isolated, but I do feel like the more people you have around him, the worse Martinelli becomes anyway. He is a transitional threat. He is somebody that I think does better when there's less people around him and he can isolate against the fullback. The more people that are around him, I don't think Martinelli has the ability to do what Ben and Odegaard and Saka do on the other side. I don't think that would suit Martinelli. Having too many people around him doesn't suit him. I think we isolate him on purpose to allow him to have the space to run into, to make sure that he has the fullback isolated. If you bring more people around him, he's not going to have that isolation. Has it worked all the time? No. I think Martinelli is limited in terms of how he can get around a defender. If somebody is just as fast as him or is on, you know, their P's and Q's, like they can stop him. So it's a tough one. I think his limits as a winger and his ability to get around his defender don't help him when he's just isolated. But equally, I think being isolated helps him in terms of not having so many people around him because he can have that isolation, which is his best way of getting around people. The one thing that does stop, I think, Martinelli's brilliance, though, more than either one of these things, the defensive work or the isolation, is not being able to swap with Gabriel Jesus. That's the one thing that has stood out to me this season, this past season, more than anything, is being isolated is not a big deal for Martinelli. That he has to have less people around him. Doing defensive work is not a big deal, but not being able to switch and get into that middle of the opposition's defense hurts Martinelli more than anything. Last season, Gabriel Jesus was everywhere. He was, sometimes we complained about him being damn near like a left back or a DM, but what really stood out was his ability to move to the left and Gabriel Martinelli to move to central. I don't know if you guys remember, but last season, one of my favorite games of last season was when we beat Leicester, I think it was 4-2 at home. And I mean, Gabriel Jesus was outstanding in that game, but Martinelli popped up centrally and scored a goal from outside of the box with his left foot, but he was central. We didn't see any of that because Kai Havertz doesn't drift. Kai Havertz doesn't drift. Like, not, it's just, I feel like that's more of what it was than just like Xhaka not being there. He can't get central, and Martinelli, if he can't get central, I do think that stops him from being as deadly. When he's like more like on that left-hand side, that left-hand corner, when he's just locked over there, I think that's what hurts him more than anything. So I think Martinelli has limits to himself. I think the system limits him, but I think it all just being because Kai Havertz was playing left center mid doesn't hold water when Kai Havertz didn't play left center mid the whole back end of the last season. Like, he was up front, you know, so it cannot just be that Kai Havertz played left center mid. Also, Martinelli was injured for a lot of the season too, and I don't think that helped him at all, you know. So I see what you guys are saying. I see loads of comments, so I'm going to try to get through as many as possible before we move to the next section. Troy says, we need a striker. Rose says, Trossard should be sold if we're being honest. Physically peak at 30. Let's get value for him now and not repeat the Partey situation. It's not a repeat of the Partey situation. Partey is never available. Trossard is always available. So getting rid of a really good squad. The reason why Partey can't be a squad player is because he's never available in the squad. So getting rid of Trossard, a player that's contributing 10 plus, like what does he have, like 15, 17, 18, 19 goal involvements? Why would you get rid of a player like that if he's on good wages and there's like nothing wrong with him? There's no reason to get rid of Trossard. LJM says if Odegaard still can play number 8, ESR can stay and play number 10. ESR should go. Chris says 100% Jess, Nelly needs to be closer to goal more often. That's when he can shine. He's not an intelligent enough footballer to do that much work in isolation. The fewer decisions, the better. I agree with that. That's why the isolation works, because all he has to think about is getting past his defender. But you're right. Like the further he is away from goal, the more decisions he has to make. And I just feel like having that rotation helps him. But equally, if the only way that you can be functional in our system is if you can get central and you can operate in wide spaces, this will bring me to my next point. But I feel like the broader conversation, or maybe the most important conversation, is, does Martinelli have enough of it in his game to exist in the system that we have now? Because the system that we played in 2022, 2023 no longer exists, because that system really relied upon Zinchenko and Jesus. And as everybody is already saying, we've moved past those players. So if Martinelli needs those two players, or in Jesus in particular, to be able to get central, and he can't exist in a team with Kai Havertz, then does he have enough in his game to be our starting left wing? That is the conversation that I feel like people need to talk about. They're not having that conversation because, again, I don't think people are thinking beyond their love for Martinelli. They're not actually thinking about what's best for Arsenal. They're thinking about what's best for Martinelli. And to me, that's not it. Mr. Bob Dabalina says Martinelli doesn't have Ben White and Odegaard on his side and has lost Sonny and Jesus from last year. You mean Xhaka? He is 100% good enough, but those players are never going to come back. I think that's the thing that people are also not thinking about. Xhaka is never coming back, and Jesus is never coming back. So if Martinelli cannot function without those two players, and one in particular is not going anywhere, do you guys really think Havertz is going to hold bench next season after the performances that he put in the back end of the season? No, he will probably most likely be our starting center forward. So if Martinelli cannot work with him, again, does Martinelli have enough in his game, or can he be flexible enough to exist in a team where the center forward is not Jesus, as somebody that drifts wide, or can he exist with Kai Havertz? Like, that is kind of where I'm getting to. Sam says, if you subtract penalties, Trossard was our top goal scorer in all competitions with 17 goals. This is despite him playing half the minutes. Saka only had 10 Prem goals. Why do you people ignore this? I don't even know why people focus on Trossard. We've always asked about having a deeper quality bench, and the only players that have been able to offer good quality minutes off of the bench have been Jorginho and Trossard, yet I consistently see them in conversations about moving them on, but they don't want to move on ESR, which doesn't make sense because he doesn't give us quality minutes off of the bench. He doesn't offer very much off of the bench. So I don't really understand that at all. You know, Trossard and Jorginho, as far as I'm concerned, have earned their position in the team, where other people are not earning anything because they don't offer much. They don't offer goals or consistent like performances, or they don't offer availability. So as far as I'm concerned, Jorginho and Trossard are untouchable for this next season because they're the only ones that offer good bench minutes. Like, it's crazy. Boy says exactly, Trossard should be sold if we're a serious football club. No. Victor says it as well. I think it's like kind of like one of the worst takes out there. And they're talking about physical peaks and things like that. But it's like, just because you guys don't like that he's not fast doesn't mean that he cannot exist within the squad. If you don't like that he doesn't have the speed, then you need to ask more questions of Martinelli, who is the faster person on the left-hand side. We wouldn't be looking at Trossard's lack of pace if Martinelli had a good season, because nobody was complaining about it last season. When we bought Trossard and he played at the back end of last season, nobody cared because Martinelli was still performing. Now that Martinelli's not performing, we feel like we need a transitional threat. So when Trossard plays and he doesn't offer that, you guys are focusing on him instead of the player that should be doing that because he has the physical capabilities to be that. Trossard is not a problem. He's just not. MM says, my issue is if Nelly is this limited and needs a set environment, then we shouldn't ask for a massive fee. So that moves me into our next part of the conversation, which is, Arsenal improving despite Martinelli not being good this season. I think that's okay to say that he hasn't been that good this season. He had decent numbers, but by his standards, he wasn't as good as people expected, right? So in the Premier League versus like last season versus this current season that just ended, Arsenal's expected threat and points per game and all that kind of stuff has improved. Also, Arsenal improved in XG, created XG allowed. We improved in almost every single metric known to man. Like the basic ones in terms of like defense and goals, and then the deeper metrics, Arsenal improved from last season to this season. And it may not have shown up in what we won, like in terms of the Premier League and things, but there was a point early on in the season where we were talking about whether or not Arsenal had improved, and it wasn't that obvious, but the underlying metrics and then the basic metrics would say that Arsenal were better. I think the eye test also post Dubai for me is the best Arsenal that I've seen under Mikel Arteta in terms of being able to score loads of goals, being defensively solid, and being able to accrue those points over and over and over again. It still wasn't perfect, but there wasn't the frailties of the season prior, and we were scoring loads of goals. And everybody just looked very comfortable in what they were doing. So Arsenal have improved. So I guess my question to people that are concerned about Martinelli is Martinelli's personal success more important than Arsenal improving as a whole? Because as far as I'm concerned, as long as Arsenal are improving, that's all that matters to me. And if certain players are no longer needed in order for us to function at a high level, that doesn't really mean much to me. It's like, if we're getting better, then why is Martinelli such a heavy topic? Now, you could make the argument that if we had focused more on Martinelli being a star, that we would have improved, but there's no data to back that up. There's really no data to back that up, that if we had focused on Martinelli and just bought players for Martinelli's success, that we would have done anything. What we do know is that that Arsenal have improved, and that Martinelli, although maybe a victim of some of the decisions that Mikel made over the summer, or the club made over the summer, that his individual performances didn't really hinder us this season, I would say. So is his individual success more important, or being right about him being better than Saka, or you being right about him being the world-class player that we have, whatever? Is that more important than Arsenal improving this season, whether he was a big part of that or not? That would be my question. And for anybody that's been left out of the team this season, whether it was through injury or through decisions by Mikel, nobody really seems to give a shit that Zinchenko and Jesus were not a part of our improvement this season, or a part of our best part of our season at post Dubai. But Martinelli is like a sticking point, because it feels like his personal success is just as important, if not more important, than Arsenal becoming better, whether he's there or not. And so, like, what is the difference between, if I were to say, and I'm not saying this 100%, but if I were to say Arsenal may have outgrown Martinelli this season, would you be upset? Or would you feel similarly to the way that people feel about Jesus and Zinchenko, that that's just what's needed to become a better team, is that you outgrow players that don't move with the system and can't improve within us getting better, Because like I said before, Martinelli is, in my mind, a pretty limited footballer in terms of what he can give us on the wing. His super skills come with him more central. And if we cannot allow him to get central, and our left winger needs to be able to be really good 1v1 and also be able to create on that side and kind of be by himself and offer that threat without having to come central. If he can't offer that, then have we not outgrown him as well? That is devil's advocate. I'm just asking the question. And when I say outgrow, I don't mean sell. I mean somebody that is no longer maybe a part of Arsenal's best 11, because most of our really good performances at the back end of last season didn't have Martinelli in the team. It had Trossard in the team, because Trossard and Kai Havertz play well together. They have done since preseason. I was at the Barcelona game. It was perfect. There were no problems. Kai Havertz and Trossard work, but Kai Havertz and Martinelli does not work. So what are we doing here? I'm just asking the questions that nobody really is asking, because people are very comfortable saying that we've outgrown certain players that are still performing, but another player that hasn't performed really at all this season gets overlooked. And is it just because the system is not offering him what he needs to succeed? Or is he just somebody that maybe we've moved past, or maybe needs to grow a little bit to be able to play in this system? Because things have changed from last season to this season, and things will change again. And some players that we felt like were foundational maybe aren't as foundational as we may have thought before. I did a keep sell loan not too long ago, and I had about 5 players in that will not sell for any fee. 5, maybe. And Martinelli was not one of them. And I got a lot of shit for it, and I didn't care. I didn't have Jesus in it. I didn't have Martinelli in it, because I don't think those are foundational pieces to what we're doing. I think Saka is foundational. I think Odegaard is foundational. I think Saliba is foundational. I think Rice is foundational. Maybe even Ben is foundational. Timber may become that as well. But, I think we learn things from season to season about who is actually in that bracket. And I think this season exposed Martinelli a little bit. It also exposed what Mikel's priorities are. That his priority is not making sure that Martinelli gets all the things that he needs in order to be successful. I think he challenged Martinelli to grow a little bit, and Martinelli didn't actually meet the assignment. He took away the ability to come central, and because of that, and not having Xhaka, Martinelli didn't have the answers to the questions that Mikel was asking, and it took a long time for Martinelli to be dropped. And so I just wonder if it's just as simple as if you just get Bruno Guimaraes in there and stick him in there, that Martinelli is just going to thrive. I don't know if it's that simple, guys. I really don't. I would love for it to be, but I do think there are bigger questions around whether Martinelli is as foundational as people think he was, or if there's another player that could step in and give us a little bit more in that winger position in the way that it needs to be played now, with a different center forward other than Jesus. Kaza says Martinelli is really good in transitions, but we don't play like that anymore. Unfortunately, this team has outgrown him. And I'm not saying this, I'm just putting it out there that there are other ways of thinking just beyond Kai Havertz stopped him from being able to even pass a ball. There were points in the season where Martinelli couldn't even pass a ball. It was so hard to watch. And some of that is confidence, but some of it cannot just be thrown into it's everybody else's fault, but not his, and maybe there's also, Gabriel is also foundational. Sorry. But there's just there's too much there beyond just it's everybody else's fault. Victor says, what's the price you guys would take for Martinelli? I don't know. Barani says, we have seen with Pep how suddenly players have an off season and come back to have a big year. They can do that because of their depth, and we need to do the same. Martinelli isn't a worry. I don't think he's a worry in terms of we have to cash in on him now. I think conversations about selling him now are a little bit premature. I think there are other players that are definitely Martinelli, as bad of a season as he had, is still more of a goal threat than Jesus. And so if there's anybody that needs to be looked at, is when people are talking about Trossard and being physically unable to play for Arsenal, then what is Jesus? Jesus is quite literally physically incapable of offering us very much at all. His availability has been shoddy since he's been here. And unlike Trossard, he offers a significant goal threat. And also, Trossard is on significantly less wages. He's not on a starter's wage. Jesus is. So if there's anybody in that group that is outside of Reece Nelson and Nketiah that needs to be moved on from that forward line, it's not Trossard or Martinelli. We don't have the luxury of giving away goals. Trossard, Martinelli equals goals. There's one player that doesn't. That's the player that needs to be looked at. So yeah, I think Martinelli has every opportunity to have a much bigger season next season but I don't think it's just that the players around him need to change. I think he also needs to add more layers to his game, and maybe his role is more suited to last 20 minutes off the bench, last 30 minutes off the bench, that player that you don't want to see come in off of tired legs. I actually think that would suit him a little bit more. And if we had a different winger that offered what he cannot give us next to a Kai Havertz, that might help us a little bit, but that's just where I'm at with it. World Boss says, sell Jesus. All he's done is end up on the floor nearly Jesus' name. Alexander says Trossard works well with the team. He can pass and shoot. Chris says, devil's advocate, is it fair to Martinelli? He's 22. If you radically changed his role, you need to coach him into a new role. Has that happened? Or was he simply expected to figure out it on his own? I don't know. This is the type of thinking that I feel like is way more useful than just because Martinelli's not playing well, instead of having these conversations, just blaming it on everybody else or picking up some negativity towards Saka or picking up some vitriol towards Kai Havertz or Mikel, is actually, I'm thinking about how the season has unfolded for him. And I don't think it's just on him. You know, his role, that everything around him has changed. And I do think Mikel does ask his players to solve problems. I think he gives them solutions, but also they have to solve some of that on their own. And also, I do think that he puts you in a position where either you get out of the puzzle or you solve it or you don't, and then you just do something different. I do think that Arteta's not really set Martinelli up a little bit, but I think he's made things in a way where if Martinelli cannot evolve, that he's no longer useful. And that's something that, you know, if you're a big Martinelli fan, you won't like. You know, I don't think that Arteta, again, I don't think his priority was to make sure that Martinelli, everything around him stayed the same so he could perform. I think Arteta recruited players for the next stage of Arsenal and said, figure out how to get out of the maze. If you can't get out of the maze, then we'll put somebody else there. And then that's where Trossard came in, and then that was just it. So it's a tough one for Martinelli, but he is only 22. And so there is all the opportunity for Martinelli to become the player that everybody feels like he is. I think it was premature to be saying that he was better than Saka. And I did see a lot of that he was more important than Saka, that Saka didn't show up in the run-in and only Martinelli did, and Martinelli. I do think that was a little premature because it was only one season where he had performed to this level. But can he get back to a better level? I think so. But I also think that Arsenal don't have the luxury of just allowing him to figure it out without bringing somebody else in. I think it is very important for not just Martinelli, but for the other side to bring in another winger that can play on both sides. When Arsenal don't have Saka, we don't look the same. We don't really have I don't think Jesus is enough to just put on the wing. I'll be honest with you. I think putting him on the wing will certify him as a head case because he came to Arsenal to prove that he's the number 9. And so just having Trossard, Martinelli, and Saka, I don't think is enough when Arsenal rely very heavily on their wingers to score lots of goals. You can't have one winger that doesn't score goals. You just can't. You have to have another one with a different skill set that also scores goals. So that is a very important recruitment piece this summer. So Martinelli can 100% exist within this team, have a better season than last season, be very impactful, but we don't have the luxury to just allow that to happen without bringing somebody else in. I think somebody else has to come in, period, no matter what. No matter what happens. Marani says, I read some stat that Jesus has started every game that Arsenal didn't score or something close to that, which is damning stat because eye test backed up the stat. Yo-Yo says Gabriel Jesus is physically and mentally fragile. Call it when he was still at City. He was benched for Sterling and now Kai. How has that improved? How has he not improved in his prime years? LJM says, can we return City back to, or Jesus back to City and get Alvarez instead? I would just say no more City. Like, it just hasn't really worked out. Like, it worked out for like maybe a season, but we've grown beyond that. And I think Arteta's Arsenal is technical, but I think Arteta's Arsenal is more physical, is taller, is stronger, is more I think like Tomiyasu is more of an Arteta player than Zinchenko is. I think, you know what I mean? Like, I think he likes Kai because of the physical traits that Kai has and his availability and his strength and, you know, also his mentality. I think Jesus and Zinchenko were a bridge to the Arsenal that we have now, but also in that, like, they've fallen behind a little bit too. So this is the most, I feel like if I could just like before a year or two ago, I couldn't describe what an Arteta player was. But I think Declan and Kai, Tommy, Saliba and Gabriel, Saka, Odegaard, I think those players make it really obvious what those players are. And I think some players don't necessarily fit that as much as the others. And I think like just bringing in Man City players got us a quarter of the way there, but like really like physically, Jesus and Zinchenko are not there. And also mentally, they're also not there. There's two of the most fragile in the team mentally. Sam says Nelly recently got 4 opportunities to score alone against the keeper and fluffed his lines. He's amazing at creating opportunities, but his confidence is low, so he can't score. It's confidence. Those 1v1s with the goalkeeper are 100% confidence based. You know, if he has the confidence, he puts those away. So I agree with that. I do think that there's still, if he's not 1v1 with the goalkeeper, it's really hard to pick times where I felt like he, you know, created something in those half spaces or was able to beat his man 1v1, or, you know, Sevilla was like the one time where we remember he was just constantly going by them. In the Premier League, it was a little bit more difficult because the defenders are a little bit better, you know, so I think he struggled. Boy says Jesus is a real mispurchase. Victor says Nico Williams is a shout. We'll talk about replacements or players that can come in and fill out the wide positions a little bit better. We could talk about that in a second. Rose says, I truly believe that after a year of Mbappe and Vinny Rodrigo will have to leave Madrid due to them all being left wingers. MM says Elise. Troy says, I want competitions, buy the best players wherever you can get them, where in the game to win and need the best. I want more players to push players to improve or push players back onto the bench. Alexander says, unfortunately, Jesus does not score enough to be our starting number 9. I'm not convinced that he would be a good option off of the wing. Like, he wouldn't be the first person. I would want Arsenal to invest in that position. I don't actually know if Jesus would be able to give us genuinely good winger performances. I know he's done it for City, but genuinely like top quality winger performances that we would require next season. Like if we had to have a stretch of games where Jesus had to start on the wing, I would be a little concerned because again, our wingers are still required to score a lot of goals, even more. Like our wingers are actually required to score more goals than our striker most of the time. So, you know, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one with him. Yo-Yo says Martinelli's shooting form and selection has always been sketchy. Arca says, I mean, nobody is going to buy injured strikers, so Jesus won't be sold. He can still play a role as a rotation player that can play across the front 3. Wilsey says, guys, there's more important players that need to be sold, like Nketiah, ESR, before we even talk about Martinelli and Trossard. I agree with that. Sample says, hi, Jess. Other than Martinelli, what about Saka? Don't you think we need equality to challenge him as well? Which is why I said whoever we bring in, idealistically, it'd be better if they can play on both sides. But, you know, that's why the investment is going to be, I think the investment is going to be a tough one because like, you know how Arsenal are. Like, know your club, guys. Know your club. We will miss out on at least one thing that we all feel like we need. We're all talking about a striker, a winger that can play on both sides. That is maybe an upgrade. Like, I think it needs to be an upgrade on what we have. Some people feel like it just needs to be somebody that can fill it, like that's a good rotational option. A top quality midfielder and a defender. Now, one of those things that we know without a shadow of a doubt we're going to get is that defender. So take that out of the equation. So only 2 more, because we still have to get a goalkeeper. You know, we're not going to get everything. So especially because we won't be able to sell all the players that we feel like we should be selling. So between, I think it's between the winger and the striker. And I think that's why we're looking at strikers that can also play off of the wing, or a really top quality winger option. And so, but that player I do feel like has to be able to play on both sides, because it's not just Martinelli. Saka is also somebody that, you know, I don't think has always performed well this season. I think he has had less top quality performances this season than last season, but was able to maintain his GA with, you know, set pieces, penalties, and also just being a really good player. You know, so there's also that aspect of things too, where it's not just about Martinelli. Martinelli is a hot topic of conversation because with bad performances also, no, the GA wasn't there. So yeah. And Saka is going to be a starter regardless, you know? So yeah, there's 300 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys smash the likes. Before we get into replacements, or options and whatever, because I know that's what you guys really want to talk about. You're like, but what about the links? We're going to talk about the links in just a second. I just want to remind you guys that I need you guys to sign up for the Classic Watch Along. You guys asked for it. Classic Watch Along, we are going to be watching the 2020 FA Cup final between Arsenal and Chelsea, where #we won. So we're going to be watching that on Thursday, May 30th at 8 p.m. UK time on TIFO. This is the website. This is what it will look like. And if you just, the link is actually in the description, and I'll actually put it in the chat right now. But when you guys click on this, it'll pop up just like this. And then instead of saying start watch along, it'll say join watch along or sign up for watch along, RSVP, whatever. And then you guys can just press this button, and you'll just have to put in your email and also code Jessica, JESSICA. So that's the first step. Click on that, email, the code is my name, Jessica. And that's how you'll RSVP for it. We are still trying to figure out whether or not we're going to actually screen share on YouTube, the YouTube channel that it's on. You guys can rewatch full matches of FA Cup games on YouTube. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but that's where we'll be watching it from. We'll either all sync it together at once. I'll go 1, 2, 3, and we'll all press at the same time, or we'll screen share. Either way, we're in this. You know, we're in this. We're going to be here. And so bring your popcorn, bring whatever you need, snacks. I'm going to have my snacks and all that, and maybe a little drinky drink, you know, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and we'll all watch that game together. So make sure you guys sign up for that. I'm really excited. Oh, I didn't even screen share. Okay, this is what I was talking about. You guys will click on, hold on, I'll go back, because I didn't even realize that I didn't even have it up. Let's go back. So yeah, once you guys come to the screen, you'll click on the watch along, and then you guys will be able to click this button and sign up. And like I said, your email and code Jessica is all you need. And I'm going to go ahead and put the, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat a couple of times so you guys can just, in all of my watch alongs, even the ones for preseason, because you know I'll do watch alongs for preseason, and even some of the Copa America games and stuff like that. Whenever I feel like our players will be playing games, they will be on TIFO. So I put the link in the chat, and I also, it's in the description. And just a couple of headlines, just for some of you guys that are probably like, there's other things going on. Why aren't we talking about it? We're just talking about Martinelli. Sambi Lokonga and Kieran Tierney are set to leave Arsenal this summer. Barcelona star Mariana Caldente is rumored to be close to joining Arsenal. That's for the women's team. She's a fantastic player. Arsenal need to have a massive summer because they had a less than optimal season this season. So let's get up to, let's buy some stars. Arsenal are open to listening to offers for Thomas Partey. He has 1 year left on his deal, and Arsenal are looking to maybe cash in, even though his preference is to stay. And Leandro Trossard and David Raya have both been called up to the Euros with their respective national teams. And the other two little bits in there are about players that Arsenal are interested in: Youssouf Fofana of Monaco and Desire Dua, from Rennes. So yeah. Let's read a couple of super chats here. Thank you so much. What about your soul? I really appreciate this really nice super chat. You're saying, hi Jess, hope you're all right. I am good. Thank you for asking. I trust the club to find something, but my concerns are more with the outgoing. Some players need to go, but there's no market for them, or they lost value heating the bench. Saw McTominay outrun Partey at Old Trafford. We have business to do. I hear what you're saying, but the last 2 years though, or since COVID, all we've really heard is that there's no market for these players. They don't have any value, whatever. I do think that excuse is running a little thin. I think that made more sense for the Socrateses and Mustafis, but it doesn't really make sense for Ramsdale, Emil, Nketiah, these players. So if for some reason we're unable to get decent fees for them, I think that's more due to the way that they were managed than the fact that they just don't have any value. All three are English. If any other team was selling those players, they'd be able to get a decent fee. We're not good at selling. And until we beat the allegations, we're not good at selling. They'll have to really like there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to get money for those three in particular. Reece Nelson, I don't expect anything from. Tierney, I don't expect anything from. Sambi, we should be able to get at least what we paid for him back. So I'm expecting sales. And if we don't get the sales in, we won't be able to address all of the needs that we have for this summer. So pressure is to sell. There's just no excuse. I don't really see why we can't sell, but I still see people doing almost letting them off the hook by saying none of these players have value. Well, why don't they have value? Not necessarily, I'm not saying towards you, but I'm just saying, why don't they have value? If it's just because they're sitting on the bench, why are they, if they are so poor that they had to sit on the bench for this, they sat on the bench all season, we should have sold them last season, because it's Nketiah was a conversation last summer. ESR was a conversation last summer, So what are we doing? Brian says, where will Kai play if we get a new striker? I think this is the main reason why we won't get a striker. We'll either get a striker that's younger and needs development, like a Sesko. Sesko is 20, so he won't be a starter, and he can kind of develop while Kai is a starter. Or what I actually think will happen is we won't get a striker, and we will get a winger, and Kai will be the starter, and Jesus will still remain as the backup. That's how I actually think things will unfold, because like I said just a couple of minutes ago, we will miss out on something, and Kai's form will be a part of the decision making around whether or not Arsenal bring in a striker. It's also going to be depending on who's available. Right now, we know that Arsenal are interested in Sesko, and basically just Sesko. Sesko could end up signing a new deal with RB Leipzig, which I think would hurt us just a little bit. But also, is he going to want to sit on Arsenal's bench? Is he going to want to develop at Arsenal? I think he would want to come to Arsenal, but he wouldn't be a starter. So why leave RB Leipzig? Why not go somewhere else where you could be a starter, right? And then you have the winger options, which also don't fill me with that much excitement either. Arsenal have been lightly linked to Marcus Rashford. That was through an in the know that said that Arsenal have had conversations. This is not the first time we've been linked to Marcus Rashford. And to be honest with you guys, as much as I don't think Marcus Rashford is going to happen, I do think Arsenal, he is the quintessential Arteta signing. Premier League proven, English, and needs a little bit of therapy. Arteta loves to save someone. He would be the next. I think Arteta would like somebody like Rashford. And I think his profile is exactly what we need. I think a taller, pacey, goal-scoring wing forward that can get past his man and is devastating when they're in form. is exactly what we need. I think that's why people like Rafael Leao, because he has some of those similar qualities. I don't, he can kind of play more central, can play on the wing, he's just a quality attacker and is taller, and has a little bit more of that straight up and down running, really fast, like directness. Like those types of players are hard to come by. So I can see why Arsenal fans like Rafael Leao, and I can also see why they'd be interested in Rashford. I can see why Arsenal would be interested in Rashford. Manchester United are never going to sell us Rashford. They were on the other end of the RVP situation, which was damaging, still to my psyche. I never recovered from that. But he wasn't even a Hale Ender, Robin van Persie, but he almost felt like one because he was there for such a young age, and Arsene really developed him into a world-class striker, and then he took his ass over to our biggest rival and won a fucking Premier League with them after not being able to piece together a fit season, like not once. And so they're never going to allow that. Rashford is their star boy. Like that is the player that they have allowed him to just do whatever for years because he's Rashford. And so they're not going to sell him to us because they know that if they've watched Odegaard and they've watched Kai Havertz, what could Arteta do with Rashford? I think Rashford is really good. Like if I had to pick like the qualities of a winger for me, it would be like a Rashford type. Like that's to a T. Not necessarily him, but those qualities. Those qualities with a better system around him, a better manager would not be good for Manchester United. So they're never going to sell him to us. They're just not. But I can see why a lot of people would be interested in him because he gives that inevitability. Even as good as we are and as bad as he's played all season, he still scored against us this season. And the goal was really nice, So Rashford is somebody that I don't think will happen. But if there was another player out there that had that skill type or that skill set, I think that's who we should go for. The Desire Doué, I've watched a couple of comps. He looks like a fantastic youngster with those kind of qualities. I think he's almost like 6 feet tall, really fast, really skillful. He's the type of player that I could see Arsenal going for because it still allows Martinelli to be the starter. But is that really what we need? No, I think we need to stop almost being afraid to bring in more star quality. I don't know if we're afraid or we always wanted to develop the star, but I would prefer if we bring in the winger for them to already kind of be ready to go, because that's going to be probably the only attacker that we bring in, and bringing in somebody that doesn't necessarily improve us, but has a couple of years to get up to the level doesn't really feel like that's the best use of funds for Arsenal right now. So I would say maybe not him, even though he looks really good. Nico Williams also looks really good, but the wages that he would require, he's not worth that. I think he's already on £200,000 per week at Bilbao, and he's going to want more than that to come to Arsenal. It reeks of Chelsea, if I'm honest. I feel like that's something they would do. I don't feel like he's good enough to warrant that, and I don't think that that's what we should be doing for somebody that still has a rawness about them. And then you have, the usuals that we've always been linked to, the Pedro Neto types, who I think we should steer clear of because of the injury problems. There is a player that might be on the market that I personally feel like I would be excited if Arsenal went for, because I do feel like they have all the qualities that we're looking for, not tainted by any sort of rival stench, somebody that would be new and fresh. Would be Adeyemi from Dortmund. I read something that he could potentially be available this summer. That is a player that I feel like I would love for Arsenal to go for. Still young enough where they can get better, but not so young and like inexperienced that it's like bringing in like somebody that really needs a lot of development. he's currently starting in a team that plays in the Champions League. Like, he's played several years at the top level already. Like, he's not somebody that would be like, you know, needing a lot of development. And he has the devastating speed and the skills and all that kind of stuff. I feel like we are maybe missing a little bit on that in that wing. Can he play on both sides? That's the only question that I don't know. But he's left-footed, you know, so I don't actually hate the idea of a left footer on the left side. It gives them, they don't really need to think as hard. And then that also means he could actually play in Saka's position too, just by like, just, you know, like Saka's also left footed, he can play on the right side. So those are the names that I've seen and just like my initial feelings on them. But I'd like to know what you guys think, because we have to get a top quality attacker. We have to. You know, Victor says Adeyemi would be great. Caleb says agree with the title. However, we also need better than Havertz, but some don't want to admit it yet. Mike Latoris says, I'm a new subscriber. Thank you so much for subscribing. Says, I do not want Rashford. He would upset the dressing room. Besides, he's on £400,000 a week and his contract is until 2028. It would cost way too much for him. It's not worth it at all. And I would imagine like any manager coming into United, even Ten Hag would want to keep Rashford. I don't see them letting him go. Honestly, and I can't even see him anywhere else, if I'm honest. Even though I really like him, like as a player, like I think when he's on it, he's outrageous. Like I think he's so good. Mwire or Mwiri says, if I get your liked on my comment, I will be already reached one of my dreams for real. Well, thank you. I mean, I've only seen this one comment, but it's on the screen. So hopefully that's what you wanted. Yeah, it's nice to know that I made a dream come true. That's awesome. Yo-Yo says Leo and Georgie showed how much this young side needs competent, calm old heads, technical, consistent, and secure players, please. Woolsey says, laugh out loud. What WTF? What about Rashford's wages? They're even higher. This is actually funny now. The Arsenal perspective says, what happened to Zubimendi? I don't know. We haven't really gotten to the midfield conversation just yet. The thing is that if we talk about everything in one show, then we'll just repeat shit over and over again, which is something that happened last summer that I really want to not repeat this summer, is that we had the same conversations over and over again, and that gets boring. So the focus of today's show, genuinely, I wanted it to be Martinelli left wing, the attack a little bit, because we're going to have so much time to talk about midfield. And I'm kind of waiting on some more concrete links on midfield. We have the stale ones. We have Zubimendi, stale now. Bruno Guimaraes, is that even going to happen? Is it possible? Release clause, whatever. And then now we have like the more recent Yusuf Fofana link. So I'm kind of waiting on more concrete links to come out before we spend time on midfield, because I feel like, to me, that's the most important thing that needs to be solved this summer. Not just from incomings, but outgoings. We're not getting enough. We actually need 2 midfielders, and we'll probably only get 1. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what's happening with Zubimendi, but I do feel like that's a conversation for another day, so that we can spend like a full hour just talking about it. Boy says, Cremascalia, I guess that's his name. Please talk it into existence, Arsenal fan base. Let's see. LJM says, however, Juan is quick and he can score, and he's also can control a game. If you're talking about the player from Wolves, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We could do so much better than that. What about your soul? Says people need to chill. According to some of our fan base, we must get Isak, De Jong, Rashford, Rodrigo. I will say this, and I've said it many times, maybe not on the channel, but in conversation with other Arsenal fans, that if for some reason Rodrigo were to become available in the summer because of the domino effect with Mbappe, you do everything in your power to get him. You do everything in your power to get him. He may not offer the lightning speed that I feel like a lot of us feel like we need, but sometimes you should give up certain specific things for the overall quality just to be better. I think Rodrigo is the star power that we are kind of missing in this team at times. And he would be able to play left wing for us. And that's his position, So I think if there was even an inkling, a sprinkle, a minute chance that you could get Rodrigo, which I know some people are, you never get Rodrigo, you never be able to buy Rodrigo. I get it. But if there was ever a time where we'd have a chance, it'd probably be now. And if things kind of came together where we could bring him in, you drop absolutely everything to make that happen. Everything. You do. You just do. Period. Let's see. Yo-Yo says we need pace badly, but they need a particular temperament. We need a golden boot caliber, no nonsense, bloodthirsty prick in attack. Chris Frazier says German side of my family are Dortmund fans. I think you'd be a bit disappointed in Adeyemi. He is very inconsistent. His technical skills are mid-level. He's mad quick though. He's a lot like Nelly. Maybe he's too much like Nelly. Fair enough. I like that insight. Thank you. Hyder says, hi, just thought on Due, the French club winger. He looks like he has stardust, like for real. Like you can just see that like in a couple of years, that's the type of player that people are going to all feel like we should have bought, right? I just don't know if we're the right environment for him. It just depends on what Arsenal want to do. I feel like bringing in somebody that's young, that needs development, that's not going to walk straight in and start, which I don't feel like he will just because of he's so young. I don't know if that's the best use of. I think Arsenal need a new starting attacker, whether that's a center forward or a winger. But because I believe in my soul that Havertz will start at the 9 next season, that my focus ends up being on left wing. So to bring in an 18-year-old, which means that we may have the same roadblocks that we've had with Martinelli and Trossard, is not what I feel like Arsenal should be doing. I feel like we need to, the one position that we have not really addressed and invested in properly has been attack. And to go into another season without really addressing it with a starter or an elite quality player, top quality player, I feel like is a miss. So that's the only reason why I wouldn't bring him in. If we already had those players and we were just looking for somebody to fill in, then yeah, I would consider that player, of course, but we need more than that, I feel. So that's kind of my initial thought on him. Aha says, just would you take Adeyemi from Dortmund? I would, even though somebody in the comments just said that he may be too similar to Martinelli. So maybe it's just a rehab job on Martinelli. Maybe he's not the one for us. Theo says, the way some Arsenal fans are afraid of recruiting proper stars reeks of inferiority complex. You want to win the Prem or the UCL, you need stars, point blank. Marco says, Rodrigo plays mostly on the right side, Vinny on the left, but yes, he could play him on the left. His actual position is on the left. The only reason why Rodrigo doesn't play on the left is because everywhere he goes, Vinny is there, and Vinny is always going to be the left winger wherever they go. So if you read up on Rodrigo, he's actually a left winger, and he plays on the right. But that also suits what we would need because, like, let's say, again, this is why, like, if we could only, like, let's say we could only bring in 3 top quality players, a top quality midfielder and a top quality attacker and a defender. If, like, let's just give random names. Like, if we brought in Hato and let's say Bruno G, let's not even say Bruno G, let's say De Jong. Let's just put De Jong out there. And then we brought in Rodrigo. To me, that is like the perfect window because we will have at least brought in a star. We may not have gotten every little thing that we wanted, but just bringing in one elite talent makes up for that. It just does. And so I do think that, like, him also being able to play on the right opens up the opportunity for you to play Rodrigo and Martinelli if Saka's not fit. So he solves so many problems, I would feel. So that's why I feel like investing in the star or the elite talent is probably better for Arsenal anyway, because quality over quantity always. He can solve so many problems. That is the player that, like, I would throw so much away for. I wouldn't do that for, like, Nico Williams or even Neto. But Rodrigo, you make a lot of exceptions to bring in that level of quality into a team that is sorely lacking. So yeah, but that's just how I feel. Especially if you're in a position where like Chelsea aren't in Champions League, Man United aren't in Champions League. We are in Champions League. Liverpool probably won't go for Rodrigo. If he were to come to the Prem, we'd be a really good landing spot for him. He would be a star for us, you know. He wouldn't have to live in anybody's shadow, you know. So yeah, that's what I would want. Yo-Yo says De Jong is overrated. Not sure we share the same view of what a star is. I'm not saying De Jong is the star. I'm saying Rodrigo is the star. I said if like an ideal window, like I just threw random names out there, Hato, De Jong, and Rodrigo. All I'm saying in that is that we will have acquired the star that we would need to get in this window, and that star needs to be up front. That star needs to be up front. We have star players at the back. We have star players in midfield. We don't have enough stars up front. And so I'm not saying that De Jong is the star. I'm saying Rodrigo is the star. And whether that's De Jong or Bruno Guimaraes or Locatelli or Fofana or Hato or Ferdy, whatever his name is, getting Rodrigo almost automatically makes that window perfect, because that is really what we're missing is stardust. You know, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't really just about De Jong. MM says Adeyemi has 3 goals in the Bundesliga in 21 matches. Not for me. Rosanon says, how about Eze or Xabi Simons, as they are different types of left wing? But are they even really wingers, though? Are they attacking midfielders that can play on the wing? I feel like the reason why I don't necessarily feel like those players fit is because the way that Arteta just decided all of a sudden that ESR couldn't play left wing anymore, where that's the best position ESR has ever played for us is left wing. The best ESR has ever played for Arsenal is off left wing. That doesn't mean he's a left winger. It just meant that, like, as a number 10, he was creative and could also do things on the wing. I think because ESR also has like physical capabilities to be able to like drive past players and stuff like that. It really worked for him. But there was a quote that had come out from Mikel earlier on this season that where he said Emil, he basically wouldn't play left wing because that's not his best position. And so I think when you think about like ESR and the way that he plays now, he's like a number 10 attacking midfielder playing off of the wing. I don't think Arteta wants those type of player playing on the wing. I think he wants more of like the Sakas and the Martinellis out there. And so I don't think that there's a natural position for the likes of Eze and Xabi Simons in this team. We don't, he doesn't really use Fabio Vieira out there. Like, it's really just Saka and Martinelli, and Trossard is in there too, but like, you know what I mean? So I think the way that we play with, you know, basically 2 DMs and Odegaard, and then our wingers are never really like the creative forward types. I'm not sure that those are the types of players that we would recruit. Not necessarily that I wouldn't take them, but I don't see a natural position for them. Every time we try to play with 2 number 10s, it doesn't really work. And he doesn't really, when he said ESR wasn't going to play off left wing anymore, I was like, yeah, that's a good place for him, you know, because he plays well off the left. So yeah, I would say there's just more of like not a spot for them. And I don't think the way that the team is set up, where it's going to be more of a 6/8 and another 6/8 and a number 8/10. That's kind of the composition of our midfield. There's not a natural space for them there or on the wing. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Victor says Rodrigo is not a castaway. Almost every damn team in the world would want him. And last time I checked, Real Madrid castaways do better, really good at Arsenal, actually better than I think Barcelona ones do, if I'm honest. But I honestly, like, we did well with, like, early on with Ozil was not bad. In a different environment, in a different time, I think Ozil would have done better for us. But like, everybody loved when Ozil came to us, and Odegaard is also a Real Madrid castaway. So Rodrigo actually played for Real. I'm like, honestly, I'm not even gonna hold you. There's not very many players from Real Madrid that I would not take. I'll be honest with you. Like, there's probably about 2 that I would not take, and one of them already played for Arsenal on loan. Like, let's be let's be all the way freaking for real. Real Madrid is the second best team in the world besides Man City. The individual talent that they have in that team, instantly, most of them walk straight into our team. And any one of our players would jump at the chance to be Real Madrid players. Let's not pretend like we shouldn't be. Like, their castaways would not walk straight into our 11 and make us better. Chouameni would make us better. Who else? Camavinga would probably make us better as a left center mid. Who wouldn't make us better except for like Ceballos? Like, let's be serious. Like, I'm taking whatever they're giving me, you know? Potes says 20 million for Fofana is not bad. I'd take Joselu, okay, as a backup striker. Like, be serious. Keenan says Rodrigo is probably the best option for our current situation. We definitely need cover on both flanks. Caleb says, just thoughts on infamous Rafael Leao. I covered it earlier, but not for me. I would like to exhaust all the other choices first and then maybe look back at him. But I don't even think that he's going to be available this summer. I mean, everybody's available for a price, but yeah, I would say, I don't know. Like, I just don't get the same feeling about Rafael Leao that everybody else does. Whenever I watch him, he does nothing, and then he does something, and then it's all in the timeline. Like, we have to get him. He's just so fabulous, and I'm just like, I just feel like there's a lot of times where he goes without doing much, and I just don't know if that's the type of player I want to spend 80 million on. But whatever. Jet Next Door says Rice gets injured, and we are playing Newcastle away in November under the lights. The job at 6 will disappear. I'll pass. Well, it'll probably be Jorginho because Jorginho exists, but fair enough. You know, let's see. MM says Rafinha had the same GA as Rodrigo playing 1,000 less minutes less. Yeah, but Rafinha is also like what 4 or 5 years older. Like, Rodrigo is still the perfect option. Like, it's not always just about GA. Rodrigo has, if that's the best that Rafinha can do, and like Rodrigo still has like 4 or 5 years to catch up to him to be in his prime, I'm still thinking that Rodrigo is much better. Like, we're all on the same page, right? That Rodrigo is a much better player than Rafinha, right? Like, Rafinha is good, but they're not on the same level. I think Vinny and Rodrigo are like up here, and then like Rafinha and them men are down here, like, you know. But also, like, fuck Rafinha. Like, he could have came to Arsenal like years ago. I stand on it. Let's see. Marco says, I would say the individual talent at Madrid is better than City's overall. It's a conversation. It really is. Let's see. Mike says, Gyökeres is the man that we need. He got 43 goals and 15 assists this season. He can surely get 25, 30 first, in my opinion. Sign him up. I like him. And I would take him. I just feel like Kai Havertz has dampered that just a little bit. And I know some people will be like, but it shouldn't. But I'm like, it shouldn't, but know your club. Arteta had to find a way to make Havertz work, and he kind of got lucky that it worked at 9, if we're honest, you know, because it wasn't looking good at left center mid. And so now the thought process from Arsenal will most likely be that if he played there the full season, that he would get 20 goals. And so he's the perfect striker for Arteta. And I do kind of think he might be. He presses well. He's tall enough to have an aerial threat. He's available all the time. He scores enough goals. He also has quite a few assists. Like, I do think Kai Havertz gives Arteta everything that he's wanted in a 9. And so I don't actually think that, you know, Gyökeres will be somebody that Arsenal would want to pull the trigger on. And if they did go get a striker, it'd be somebody that was younger. I just don't see us doing it. So yeah. Wilsey says, Jess, who is the Caldente from Barcelona? Caldente is a Barcelona women's player. So they just won the Champions League. They did back-to-backs. Caldente, I'm pretty sure she's a La Masia graduate. She's a fantastic player. She's like a number 10, but she can also play number 9. She's very versatile. And she's just the type of player that you need to bring in after you let Viviana Miedema go. I still don't even think that begins to make up for that, but at least we're getting to the level standards that we should be going out to get. Just like I'm talking about with Rodrigo being a Real Madrid leftover that I would take. I'm taking Barcelona leftovers all day long. All day long. Any of them can come to us. So that's Mariana Caldente. She's a really good Barcelona women's player that's supposedly going to be coming to Arsenal, which would be great. Keenan says, I would much rather go for a specialist left center mid like FDJ or Barella instead of Bruno and simply keep Partey for depth for another season in case somebody gets injured. You can't keep somebody there for depth that's not even available to be on the bench. Like, it's going to be Jorginho. I don't know why people won't move on from Partey. Like, we've re-signed Jorginho to be that backup. He's the only one you can rely upon. Like, Thomas Partey, like, what is he going to do on the bench? And you can't have a player on 250,000 pounds per week sitting on your bench for the odd 1-2 games a season. That just doesn't work. Like, I would hate for some of you guys to be my accountant if you guys think having somebody on starting wages playing 5-6 games a season makes any sense for a team that should be shifting those wages onto a star player. So no, that doesn't make any sense. Jorginho will be the backup. I kind of agree with the specialist left center mid. Like, that makes sense to me. I would take De Jong or Bruno Guimaraes. I could see either one of those working with Declan, but the idea that Partey needs to be the backup and you guys are willing to just let 250,000 pounds sit on the bench, you guys could never take care of my finances. Like, there's just no way. There's just no way. Yo-Yo says we considered Barella last season. I think Italians are a no-go. And Chris says, not gonna lie, I'd love to know what really happened with it. There's a lot more going on that they've said. So sad to see her go. So yeah. But you guys, we have kind of went through everything that I wanted to get through today. So there's 330 of you guys watching, which is really, really cool. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. And do not forget to RSVP for the classic watch along that we're doing on Thursday. And just reminding you guys once again, the link is in the description. I also put it in the chat. You guys can always like DM me or whatever and ask me for the information. I'll give it to you. But I'm really excited for that after we do our Thursday show. If you guys find Deluded, let me know. I've been trying to get in contact with him. Usually we do shows on Thursday, but after the Thursday show, we'll just all head over there and just relax and have a good time, because it's not all about transfers. Like, sometimes it's just fun to hang out. And so I'm really excited to do the first one on TIFO. And so make sure you guys sign up, like and subscribe to this, to the channel, like the video so it can get seen by more people. And yeah, thank you so much for everybody that put in super chats and just people that even just put in normal comments. You guys really make the show. It's not just my show, it's yours as well. And tomorrow we'll talk about something else. I just don't know what. Just want to make sure we don't like run through everything before the transfer window even opens, or else we won't have much to talk about. But I really enjoyed the show. Make sure you guys like the video. It really helps. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.